Abner, you were one of the lucky few who had the opportunity to spend a brief amount of time with the Pixel 9a. Tell me your first initial impressions, and then let's get it. I'm going to ask you some questions because I'm really intrigued about this device.
So my very first impression is, and I should qualify this, I do use the Pixel 8a daily as the app, as the phone that has my pocket reading list, that has just browser stuff, my Kindle app. I use it to read, and when I just want to read and have no socials, that kind of thing. So I use the Pixel 8a daily. With that in mind, when the minute I saw the 9a, I was like, those bezels are thick.
So the bezels themselves, they are like what? From what I can see, and obviously what we've seen in terms of your hands-on time with it, they're a lot bigger than the regular Pixel 9. What would you say in terms of like percentages-wise? Would you say like maybe 20% bigger, 30% bigger? Because obviously the press images don't really give you a true idea.
I don't know. I couldn't quantify the percentage either. It's just... I think maybe it is more so to the credit of the Pixel 9 Pro, which is my daily driver. And I think the thick bezels are just a commonality with the A series. But you want my first impression? That's my first impression.
I want to raise a point though. Do you think in some ways that Google is actually increasing the bezel size on the smaller phone to account for the fact that there is basically that creates that separation? Because surely they could make the bezel almost the same size as the regular Pixel 9a, because I'm sure that display doesn't cost that much.
It's a POLED, plastic OLED, I believe. But compared to the main series, so I think there's a reason to. I think it's probably more justified than not why it's thicker bezels. I think they probably do try to go for the smallest one possible. Especially since this rest of the phone, my second impression would be that this phone is actually engineered specifically to be its own thing. And that was my other main takeaway. Compared to other previous phones whose lineage draw heavily from the main model, I think the 9a is a bit more unique in that it really feels like Google started from the ground up to build this phone, and they did. So when they built this phone, they didn't set out to make it flat. They presumably they went with a designer had a camera bar, and they went from there. The priorities were larger battery and that vapor chamber. So from there, once they were done with it, they noticed the camera bar was pretty minimal, and they decided from there to shrink it, to go all the way. They did some work on the camera, which is similar to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold sensor, but not identical. They did all that stuff, and at the end, they got to this really minimal camera area, is what they're calling it, I guess.
Do you? I'm seeing the discourse online, and there seems to be a bit of almost a line drawn in the sand with like people saying they hate the design, it's really boring, it's plain, compared to, say, the Pixel 9 series, which stands out. It does stand out for it. It is really well designed.
I think, did you tell me this? This looks like the iPhone 4.
Yes. Yeah, I think it does. I really do.
And the iPhone 4 is really... I still remember looking at that like years ago and thinking, this is like the platonic ideal of a phone. And I think... in general, to zoom out from the Pixel camera, the design lineage that we've had since 21, I think a flat phone, even with however good cameras are getting, I think this is the platonic ideal of a phone, and I'm actually pretty enthusiastic about Google being able to differentiate their A series phones from a camera bar and something that's a bit flatter. I kind of hope it's not a one-off decision by them to just go flat 1 year and not going forward. Though then again, we assume that the Pixel 9, they're going to keep that design for a long while. So maybe we're in this for a few generations. But I like it on the design. I like visually. I enjoy that it's small, and I'm kind of interested to see. Just we haven't had a chance. We don't have review units right now. It's not launching until next month. But I like the idea of seeing how it slips in and out of my pocket, how it feels in the hand, whether I can just grip it more. Whether you don't really realize this, but you purposely grip these Pixel phones lower because of to avoid the camera bar. I'm kind of curious to see what it's like you can grip anywhere.
Yeah, it feels. I mean, obviously, visually it looks a bit different because the camera bar's a little bit more. Is it top left adjusted as opposed to more centrally with the 9 series? I mean, what can you say about in terms of that? I know they've gone for that flat. They've kept one foot in the 9 series in that they've kept those flat sides and stuff. Does it feel really similar before you turn it around? Obviously, let's just take away the fact that it's got larger bezels. The materials they used, I'm always interested with A series devices because there's some corners that are cut, obviously, to help lower the cost.
Metal frame.
Does it feel just as good in the hand? Like, obviously nice and cold to the touch, if that makes sense, and having this like the same sort of how would I describe the balance in hand? Does it have that? Kind of have that with the 9 series and the 9A?
I think I need more time with it to make that call. But in terms of you have metal frames, so I don't think that's an issue. The thing you're holding more, like, because there's like a curve to the back of your palm. You're not really holding the back that much as you are mostly interacting with the frame. And it's a metal satin frame with a satin finish, which is obviously better than the glossiness of the Pro series. And I think head on, it does feel like the 9.
I guess another question there then is, when obviously you're an 8A user, I was on and off an 8A user last year. Does it feel like a major step up in terms of the quality? Because I do think the Pixel 8A was a very good quality phone in terms of pricing.
It's in terms of quality. Again, it comes down to more time, but it looks like the 9, which looks like the iPhone. I think most people will find it familiar, but in terms of premiumness, I don't think it's a regression from the 8A. The 8A already got there. And to your point about whether it's cool to the touch, I mean, the back never feels like that on the 8A, and because it's plastic, and it's plastic again this time. But I think it's head on. It looks like the 9.
I suppose that in some ways that's a good thing. Just from an external perspective, I didn't have the opportunity to test this device. I very much feel like with the previous A series, and in a little bit in defense of what Google have done in terms of designs and made this a greater separation, but also stayed within the same ballpark. I feel like with the A series previously, it felt very much like it wasn't cheap. Imitation's not the right way to describe it. It felt very much like it was, hey, this is the cheap version of the good version. Like this is good, but it's not as good as the Premier, the Pro, whatever you want to call it. It's like you
absolutely felt derivative. You knew where it's coming from, and I don't think you can say that this time.
I feel like I'm very much of the opinion now that this could. I was highly critical of the 8A last year because the 8A felt like it encroached upon the regular 8
it's
too much.
It's just the time, and especially when the 9 came out.
There
are a lot of things not going for that.
I'm wondering if this now having I don't want to say unique, but it's a unique take on the design. Let's call it that. A unique take on the Pixel 9 design.
Take on the design, and we've never had that.
Helps create this greater separation between the A series and the regular 9, because we had this space in which last year where I was kind of like, why would you even buy this phone? This phone feels confusing. Go get the regular Pixel 8 because it's now cheaper. I suppose you could argue the same about the Pixel 9 and the 9A now because the regular 9 is hitting those discounted rates. But I guess some people will get deals on the 9A at their carrier stores and maybe get one unlocked with the trade-in ridiculously cheap, and the discount will be made there. I think the A series, personally, I think it's starting to it's run its course a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. I know a lot of people will be listening to that and saying, what the hell are you saying? I just think maybe we're at a point where that does the A series matter as much as it did? But to counteract that point and contradict myself, I like the fact that this is a $500, £500 phone, and the step up to the Pixel 9 is now greater at that $799. So there is a greater separation by pricing. And then obviously you make that separation with design as well. So there are some things I can kind of understand and other things I'm questioning. But again, like you say, it without having tons and tons of time with the devices, it's hard to make that kind of distinction. Do you find that with this phone, you are drawn to this phone because it offers what you want from the A series? Because I know you're a heavy A series user, probably more than I am. Do you think it does that more so than it has in the past, or do you think you don't feel any different at this point in time?
I'd qualify that in saying that what I want from an A series is the smallest possible phone that's easy to hold and read on. And to me, the epitome of that was the 4A, purely based on the size and curves perspective. If anything, the 9A going boxier hurts that for my reading needs. I'm probably sticking with the 8A for a few years. I went from 4A, 6A, and then 8A. Even numbers. Funny how that works. Well, I used the 3A for a bit too in that purpose. But anyways, I don't know. I think for the general audience, I think that one of the takeaways we had with the 8A was something along the lines of, anybody can use this phone, even the most professional users. It's a Pixel camera. It's the Pixel software experience. It has Pixel features. So I guess that was still kind of in the pre-AI era, and the 8 gigs of RAM is the thing that we'll be looking at going into the review. Google didn't bump it to, was the 12 or the 9?
Yeah, 12.
I think year to year, I think that's the thing to look into, to be especially curious about what experiences are offered with 8 gigs of RAM. The headlining features are still there, and I was just looking at the product page for the 9A. The besides the camera, they're really touting Pixel Studio. Image generation. My belief is that people do like image generation. They like it as this fun thing to have. It's not a serious feature. You wouldn't buy a phone because of it. But I think my underlying premise is that people enjoy image generation, and maybe Google is more aware of that than not, and that's why they're leaning heavily into it. But I don't know, I just found that interesting.
I don't think I would ever buy a phone based upon image generation, but I agree with you to an extent. I think it's one of those things that I think it lives and breathes in lives and dies by the being in Gboard as an integration and being able to create sticker packs quickly. I just want to quickly talk about the differences though in terms of the hardware, because obviously you mentioned that there's less RAM. There are some upgrades and also some downgrades. It's a really confusing mixture. One of the ones I wanted to point out, and I don't know if people were aware of this, but there is an upgrade here to an IP68 rating, which I think is really, really important for phones moving forward.
Yes.
And I guess this design probably aids that, maybe unintentionally, I wonder, because I think on the previous Pixel A series devices with the camera bar, am I right in thinking that on the Pixel 7a and the 8a, the camera bar, is it a metal or is it plastic? I'm trying to remember. I don't have one to hand. Is the metal
in hand with me?
So I do wonder if that was ever factored in.
I think it's a back plate. I don't take my word on that. But but I know this design it's very thin, and Google's product imagery is very much reading of that fact. I think it won't be noticeable to most people, which is the point.
I suppose another thing to point out with that design change is with the no camera bar is that it still retains that the Futurama Bender visor style. So there are things that are tying this all together. I saw something earlier today on, I think it was on Threads, maybe it was on Blue Sky. Someone who I follow was talking about it and saying they would have liked to seen something, even if it wasn't a protruding camera bar, like an almost etch thing. I actually kind of disagree with that. I think that if you had something that was etched into the back glass or whatever, the polycarbonate back, I think it might look really, really cheaper than it does, if that makes sense. I think
like a stripe, basically?
Yeah, like a go faster stripe on a car. I think it would look pretty much ridiculous.
That's funny.
And I feel like if you want that, I suppose you could get a skin from someone. I'm sure someone will make something like that. Or there'll be a case that does it.
A skin will probably make it the camera thing completely flat.
And in terms of other hardware downgrades / upgrades, and I think this kind of reinforces my point. I think this one makes a lot more sense because there's separation created here. There is no, I know you didn't get to test this, or if you did, please let me know. There is an optical fingerprint scanner, so that returns to what we had on the 8A and older.
Yeah, it's fine on the 8A.
It's fine on the. Is it do we know if it's the exact same?
I am not sure, but
we're not sure.
Like, it's fine.
Yeah, I feel like that is
face analog, so
yeah, those kind of things make sense because obviously they're not trying to imitate. They're just making the things available that are already available. The other thing mentioned is that 8 gigabytes of RAM. How do you think Google are going to handle this in the long term? Because obviously there's going to be a lot of things that happen with the 9 series in terms of like the AI stuff.
The bump next generation is inevitable. I think one of our complaints with the Pixel 6a was the RAM, 6 gigs of RAM. Or did the 7a go to 8? Anyways, that was my issue with it, and I felt it. And I think it's not ideal, but I mean, the on-device AIs, there's not a lot just yet. Like the key AI product people are interacting with is Gemini, and the way Gemini is going to use on-device Gemini Nano is just for contextual suggestions. When you activate the overlay, there will be some suggestion chips. They announced this last I/O. I'm pretty sure it hasn't launched yet, but I don't think core experiences are going to be impacted. I am curious whether we're going to get pixel screenshots on this. Since there's no mention on the product page, I don't think we will. It's just a shame, but then again, like we've said this multiple times. Pixel screenshots is a great organizational tool without any AI.
Yeah, I think in my heart, I hope that they do add pixel screenshots. I think it's one of those things that for people with older Pixel devices, and I'm a big screenshot taker anyway, I think it would be enough for me to think, yeah, I do want this. But I guess if you've not tried it, you don't know. So maybe I'm talking absolute
rubbish. I don't think
it's
killer yet. It's like, I don't think it's maybe as it gets better, they do more advanced stuff with finding things and pairing things. But honestly, you have that in Google Photos with the search, the basic OCR search. I think if you don't have pixel screenshots, you use Google Photos, and Google Photos is search, even without the Ask Gemini thing, is pretty good.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm definitely a pixel screenshots convert, and I say that as I downloaded an alternative option on my S25 Ultra, so I need it. I'm so bad with screenshots that I feel like I need it, and it silos it away and keeps my screenshots kind of organized rather than diving into Google Photos. But I don't think anyone out there is thinking that this is going to sell devices based on the back of pixel screenshots. But hopefully it does come to it. I'm intrigued to see what happens with it. Yeah. But obviously the main functionality is there. So we get Pixel Weather, Google VPN's available.
Studio, a lot of camera features, macro focus, which is always delightful.
Macro focus, yeah, I think that's going to be a really good option for this.
And the new panorama
device
mode, the night sight.
Oh, the panorama! I didn't know the panorama mode was there. That again, I've not used it apart from during testing phase. But again, all of these things kind of make a difference. I think, I think Google would remove them if they were not seen to be being used on devices. So it's nice to see the A series getting a bump. I'm intrigued to see what happens with the camera as well. If the camera's a noticeable step up with a new sensor.
9 Pro full tweak. It's the Add Me. Again, we've said this before, but I think the service to the Pixel 9 and Add Me was that it was launched in the middle of the year versus the usual closer to the holidays period. So there's a longer gap of people not using it. Like when it launched at the end of August, it was post-summer. People were done with their vacays, and they didn't really get to experience it in mass until like Thanksgiving and earlier and later.
Okay, one other downgrade I want to talk about, and this is one that I'm kind of worried about in some respects. This is not the same modem that's using the Pixel 9, which has been pretty solid for me so far, I must admit, when I've been using the 9, the 9 Pro, the 9 Pro Fold, and the 9 Pro XL. Do you think this is going to be something that's concerning? Because I know, obviously, the first couple of generations of Tensor with that, I want to say it was an Exynos modem. I don't know which one it was, but I want to say 5300, but I don't think that's correct. Do you think that could be a stumbling block here if there's noticeable differences in terms of like cellular capabilities? Because I mean, at the end of the day, was if we're going to have AI functionality on these devices, and if Google eventually says, "Oh, this is going to be the cloud device or the one that accesses Gemini via the cloud a little bit more," that's one kind of asterisk I have against this potential phone with regard to the AI stuff and on-off device processing.
It really adds to the point that the modem and like the 8 gigs of RAM. I think they're more. It almost speaks to how Google went all in on design, like in terms of what they prioritize this year. I'm sure that this new design is the more costly aspect, and that might be the merits ultimately to this generation. But I don't know. The exciting thing to me is that if with the Pixel 9 to 10 expected to look the same, I'm kind of excited about how if Google, rather than base the A series phones on the main generation, if the 10A is a more direct successor of the 9A, I think that's an exciting place for them to build upon. I don't know. Like, I think they prioritize design over anything else this year, and we'll see how those factors play out. I think this phone is a looker. The colors, iris it's interesting. In the hands-on video, we have a shot of iris versus their previous group phones, the Bay Pixel 8 Pro and an 8A from last year. It's more purple. It's a bit darker, and then there's peony, of course, which is it's more salmon than pink to me, honestly. But these colors are vibrant. I think. Okay, it's hard to say how much the actual target audience for this phone cares about the camera bar, or the lack of, or whether they'll even notice that it's thin. But I think that is a pretty, combined with the colors, I think that's something that people will note, they'll see and they'll feel, and it might take them getting their phones in the hands-on of the phones before they can make a call. But I think there's the visual story, the design story for this phone is so strong.
And if you were to pick one color, because I was going to save this to the very, very end, but we'll get it out of the way now. What would you pick in terms of color? Because I'm the most striking, and I don't know why, and I'm not the kind of person that would usually go for a plainer color. I really like the look of the porcelain, and I think the porcelain color was just knocked out of the park this year.
Really?
Yeah, I think it looks incredible. I think the iris looks great. I just don't know if maybe it will age as well as some of the other colors, in terms of like, if I have in 5 years' time, when I look back at the device, I'm like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have picked that one because it's a bit like of the era. I feel like the plainer colors might be a little bit better.
That's a good point. It's a shame because I kind of wish they kept the green.
Yes, agree. Green should be part and parcel of Google's kind of repertoire, because no one's really doing great green phones, I don't think.
The Pixel 8 was fantastic. 8A was fantastic in that regard. And the Bay was kind of 8 Pro again. The Bay was nice. I think it has to be iris because of the uniqueness. It's, to me, that's a continuation of the purplish on the Pixel 3A. It's a real callback when they had that Thanos era plugin or whatever. That was a weird thing.
I think that's going to be the one that I mean, you can already see that it's in all of the marketing campaigns. I think it's nice that there's 4 colours. I think it would have been even nicer to have maybe 6. I do think Google should maybe have 6 colours of their phones, but I understand if it's not making the sales figures that potentially some of the other brands that have multiple colours, maybe we could have an online exclusive at the Google Store, a bit like we had with the Coral at 7A, which I still think is... I've kind of toned down my love for it recently. As I just said a moment ago, I think it hasn't aged as well as I expected. Would I rock the Pixel 7a Coral now?
It's a good thing to think about, especially, again, these phones, 7 years of use. It's a really important...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think most people will have 7 years of use, but I do think there will be people in... Let's be completely honest. I think there's going to be markets that don't necessarily get access to this phone this year. I know that it's been there's 32 countries this time around, which is great. That's the most of any A series device, and it expands. I think it's by a fair amount over the Pixel 8a. I know that there was some slow releases later in the year. I think it was something like 23 originally with the Pixel 8a. So I wonder what will happen if, like, what tends to happen with a lot of older devices is, and I'm sure many people know this, is they end up in emerging markets or markets that don't necessarily get access to them initially. So your phone may end up at a reseller in somewhere else in the globe. And I think that's something to consider, because those things, if you'd ever want to resell it later down the line, are people going to buy a really ridiculously colourful phone, or do they want something a little bit more inconspicuous? And I've started to think, maybe it's because maybe I'm showing my age now that the flamboyant ones are not as interesting to me. But yeah, I think in an ideal world, I would probably go for the Iris. But I think if I do pick up my own personal unit after the review period, I don't know. I'm leaning towards porcelain. I don't have a porcelain phone, a white phone, but that is that's where it is for me, my boring phase of life. I mean, I guess we kind of need to talk about why there is a little bit of delay and there's technically no pre-orders for this phone. Google listed that there was a component quality issue that, I mean, in their words, they said it only affected a small number on some devices. I mean, we don't know what it is. They've not told us what the in air quotes component is. I can't help but think this is something to do with the vapor chamber, because this is a brand new addition for an A series device. I mean, I don't know. I'm interested to see what you think. What do you think it could be? Yeah, it was shot in the dark either way.
It's it's a shot in the dark. I feel like, well, obviously, if there's something wrong with the vapor chamber, heat is a concern. Anything with the battery is an immediate safety issue. But I guess that warrants any issue, warrants the reaction they're having. But I think my next guess would go to the camera in terms of new sensor. They did a lot of things to make it smaller, that kind of stuff. Maybe that. And I think the display is also worth wondering about. At this point, we're just
a really good point.
Components.
That's a really, really good point. I do wonder if there's something to do with the shape of the device that means there's certain things that they've maybe not accounted for. But I mean, how do we define what a small number of devices is? It'd be very interesting to see if anybody ends up with a, in air quotes, pre-release unit on the third-party reseller market, and someone tears it down. I'd be very, very fascinated to see what it is, because that's very, very rare. At least Google has, I suppose in some respects, at least Google has acknowledged it. They've taken accountability for it straight away. I know that we've had years and years and years of, how would we describe it? What's a political way to say it? It's quality control issues. A lot of older Pixel devices had a killer issue or something. I mean, we could run through. What would the Pixel? I can't remember if there was anything wrong with the original Pixel, off the top of my head. I know Pixel 2 had that horrible screen color shift on the Pixel 2 XL particularly. 3 was did the battery expand? And RAM was a problem. Pixel 3a, did 3a have a problem? No, to be fair, 3a, I don't think 3a had a problem. 4 was riddled with issues. Back glass would separate. The screen oleophobic coating was terrible. 5 was technically not sealed correctly as opposed to that unibody design. 5a, don't know, because that was only US and Japan. 6 was, well, as much as I love the 6 was a little bit of a disaster in some respects. Modem was terrible, fingerprint scanner. Other than that, nothing major. I say nothing major, tongue in cheek, obviously. 7, did we have anything wrong with the 7? I don't think we had anything major with the 7. Maybe Tensor again was overheating a little bit. 8. Yeah, maybe from Pixel 8 series, we've had I'm touching wood here in terms of like not trying to curse this, but we've not had any major issues. And I think the Pixel 9 series I've had nothing. You see the odd community post where people complain like, this is a problem with my phone, and you can tell it's just a one-off. Like, so at least this time around, it's been potentially resolved ahead of launch. So rather than trying to push a software fix or something that is never going to be resolved. So yeah, I can't be highly critical. It's disappointing from a pre-order perspective and from a review perspective, but I guess you listened to us for the last 30 minutes talking absolute rubbish about a phone that you've only been able to test for half an hour. I don't know. I want to get your read on it. What do you think? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it was good that they did this ahead of time, or maybe
absolutely. It's April. There's still some separation between the 10 launch in August, let's say. There's still a whole summer. And again, like, I guess the thing to keep in mind is they launched this early. They had to 2 months early, really. They had to get this done. And again, new design. It's a new design. They engineered more out of it. If this delay is in any way related to that, maybe that's the cost of starting something new.
I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good way to kind of tie everything together. I'm excited to see what the real deal does bring to the table. Obviously, you tested a pre-release device and you didn't see any issues, so that's a good sign, I guess. But half an hour is never long enough to ascertain what something's like. But I'm excited for the Pixel 9a. Anyone else out there, if you're wanting to pick one up, we don't know the ship date. We just have April. If this component issue is resolved quickly, I guess it could be fairly early. But
I feel like
do you feel like
late.
End of April?
If it was software, it could be like pretty fast turnaround. They just have to push the OTA and whatever. But hardware, I feel like it's end of April, mid-April at the earliest. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're going pretty far back deep into April.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to test a couple of things, especially that big battery. I think this is the biggest on a Pixel today. I want to really put that through its paces because I think there was so much improvement from Pixel 8 to Pixel 9. Even since Pixel 6 era, we've had a huge improvement in battery life. So I'm wondering if this vapor chamber and a lot of other changes means it's going to last a few days. And we
didn't talk about that. Biggest battery, but specifically, I think it's interesting to note that they went from 30. So his past few years, they said that Pixel gets 24 plus hours of battery life. With this one, they went to 30 6-hour increase, pretty sizable. I think what people really care about here is that how that translates to the main series.
Yes, I mean, what's going to happen next year? Do you think we'll get upgrades off the back of this? Do you think this? I don't know why Google don't use the 9A or the A series as a bit more of a testing ground for battery tech. They could do it on a smaller scale because I don't know if the A series sells more than the regular devices, but I don't know why they don't do a little bit more. But I know that the charging's increased, which is always good. 23 watts is, hey, it's not fast, but it's better. I think we definitely need a big leap with the Pixel 10, and I think this kind of sets the scene. I think it's a good way. It's a good almost fire break between the regular Pixel 9 and what's coming in future. And this is that final kind of tightening up of the experience potentially what we had on day one with the Pixel 9, which was excellent. It's the first time in a long time that it's really, really, really easy to recommend a Pixel with no issues. And I think everything just seems to have come good in the last few months. And this could be that nice final send-off. As long as I can get it out, let's just get this for Google. Listen, if you listen to this, if anyone's at Google's listening to this podcast, please get this phone out as soon as possible before I/O, because it'll be that nice little palate cleanser for anyone who wants something. And a lot of people will buy this as a secondary device, especially Pixel fans. And I'm seeing and hearing from people who are going to do it. Oh, I want this as a backup, or it's going to be for my parents. It's going to be my girlfriend who doesn't care about phones. it's a perfect time. And I think it's the perfect time to wrap things up. I really appreciate you listening today. I really appreciate you giving us some insight as well, Abner, because you are the sole person on the team who spent time with this phone. I'm very, very jealous, as I am with any Pixel hardware. I love talking Pixel hardware. It's not something we get to do all the time. Hey, in a few weeks' time, when we do get time with this device, we'll go through a full rundown of the pros and cons, and there'll be lots of comparisons to the in air quotes market leader. I'm really interested to see how this stacks up against the iPhone SE. Personally, I don't see why you would get the SE unless you want potentially the hardware right now. I think there's going to be probably some fire sales soon. So yeah, even if you don't pick one up on pre-order, I can definitely see this being decreased in price quite substantially in a few months. Yeah, thanks for listening. This has been episode 46 of Pixelated, and I'm saying thanks again to you, Abner. Thanks for joining me, and I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.